I want to talk about sovereignty. It's a theme that's come up a lot this past week, but I want to weave it in different ways. Firstly, what is sovereignty? What is it that we're going through individually in relationship to sovereignty, but also how is it playing out in relationship? Because I've done a podcast in the past about why is there this epidemic of single women. And sovereignty, I think, is a piece of this, of how the very dynamic and definition and paradigm of relationship itself is changing. So the moment that the focus is coming into our sovereignty, coming out of top-down structures, authority over the compliant, codependency, all of these things, everything has to rejig and restructure itself. And, if you haven't noticed, these are the times that we're moving through right now, is really the crumbling before the rebuilding. Well, simultaneously we can be rebuilding, but we're redefining everything. So I want to look at this theme of sovereignty and how it plays out individually, collectively, and in relationship. So let's see where it takes us. Let's dive in. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So let's begin with what is sovereignty. So the way that I like to look at it is sovereignty is who you truly are. It's not only your human birthright, but it's like the for lack of a better term, the birthright, the infinite right of your soul is to be sovereign. You are your own unique imprint of consciousness, of energy, of existence itself, right? So that drop of the ocean that represents your soul as part of the collective, as part of source, the waterfall of source that, creates all these droplets of individual souls. But each individual soul is sovereign. And what that means is nothing can own you, and nothing can kill you, and nothing can destroy you. Nothing actually has power over you. Right? We can be manipulated, especially through fear, but nothing can actually destroy who we are as a soul, as a sovereign being, entity, energy, essence, right? So that's kind of zooming out. Bringing it down into your human self, sovereignty, for me, is directly connected to your authenticity, your authentic self. The I am, not the egoic I am. I mean, that can be a part of it, right? Because we need the ego to be human. But the I am that is who you truly are and who you truly know yourself to be, the canvas behind the painting, as I've used that analogy before, that metaphor. So the sovereignty is residing in that infinite, eternal, immortal I am presence, right? And without going too much into it, we've been, thousands of years not in our sovereignty, not at all, right? So I'll let you go down that rabbit hole. So it's big that we're coming back into our sovereignty. We're awakening and remembering who we truly are and the magnificence of who we truly are and all of our innate abilities that have been dormant. But at the very least, if I look at it from a kind of personal self-development, self-growth, why you might be here listening to this, it's coming back home to who you truly are and your worth. Your worth, because when you understand your worth, you can understand your sovereignty. It's just naturally there. When we're out of worth, when we're out of, and when I say out of worth, it's not that you lose it because it's innately there. We forget it. We forget it, or we're, told to forget it. We're shown to forget it. Whatever words you want to use for that. So it's like when we come out of feeling I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not lovable, we do step away from our sovereignty, because our sovereignty would say, well, I'm whole and I'm good enough and I'm worthy and I'm lovable and I deserve to be here and I belong here and I matter and I'm significant and I'm uniquely me. And you know what I'm saying? So sovereignty is that kind of, it's a part of that aspect of home, which is really my overriding message, is like, can we just come home to who we truly are? I call it the authentic self. But sovereignty is enmeshed in that. It is a part of that, right? So that's sovereignty on an individual level. Collectively, we're moving into this, idea of sovereignty as we reclaim our power, as we reclaim our, how would I describe it? You know how you've heard me talk about how we've kind of been like spiritual children, right? And now we're growing up and we're becoming the spiritual adults that we are. And so part of that is getting out of this this paradigm of authority over the compliant, right? The hierarchy, the someone knows better, the whether that authoritative figure be political or it could be spiritual, right? Could be a guru, could be a teacher. And we're coming out of that way of perceiving things and recognizing that we're actually all part of a circle, and that we all matter, and that we all have things to be able to share our wisdom and to, receive wisdom from others. But there's a mutuality, there's a reciprocation, there's it's just getting out of seeing it from top to bottom or bottom to top, right? And looking at it more circular, more cyclical, more in balance. All of this is bringing in the balance of the masculine and the feminine, of the right and left brain, of the, coherence between heart, head, and gut, the energetic, physical, emotional, all of it is really like, can we come back into balance? Can we come back into center? Because we've been like pulled in all sorts of directions. And so sovereignty, to me, if I visualize it, it feels like the trunk of the tree. It's centered. It's that still point. And it's both grounded and connected to the earth, and also the branches that reach out to the divine, knowing that we are both. We are both earthly and divine beings. We are spirit and matter. So for me, it's this beautiful homecoming to that center point of all. And that, I will just say, for me personally, I tend to like to look at things of what is the middle way. There will always be polarization and, the contrast, light and dark, day and night, but that we don't get thwarted into either extreme, because what we see on the planet right now is the extreme polarity, of I'm right and you're wrong. My reality is right and your reality is wrong. This side, not that side. And, I don't think this world is really going to know peace, and we're not going to know inner peace until we aren't pulled by the illusion of that polarity, that we can hold differences. Differences are fine, but that we can hold them with love and respect. Right? That it doesn't always have to be a point of tension, division, and war. Really, it becomes a war, whether that's physically playing out or emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, energetically playing out. So, sometimes I look at the world and go, God, we've got a long way to go, because in some ways it feels like it's getting worse, and I'm also a believer that the more that we continue to talk and be in the awareness of heart. I shared this in a video. We can't, like, when you're in your heart, you can go against the genuine feeling, but it's going to hurt. Your heart wants to love. Your heart wants to be compassionate. If you go into kind of hatred and judgment and division, your heart will hurt. And so one of the things I was saying in the video that I shared last week was we need to become more sensitive. And actually being sensitive is a really, really good thing, because it makes us care. It makes us feel one another. It makes us feel how we're interconnected, not just with one another, but also with the planet, with nature, with animals. And we can go against the feeling. We can go against the truth of what is there, but it's going to hurt us. And so then I think when it hurts us, we go, oh, wait a second. Do I want to feel like this? It begins to hurt to judge. And I think that's actually a very good thing. Not that I'm saying I want us all to hurt, but then we can alchemize. Then that's one of our greatest, most impressive gifts, I think, sometimes as human beings, is that we are alchemists, that we can alchemize something that's terrible and make it wonderful, something that's so brutal and ugly and make it beautiful. I mean, that transformation is like awe-evoking sometimes. It's really beautiful and wondrous. And I think we don't recognize that power and ability that we have, and that it's really something very, very special and unique to being in this human form. So yeah, dropping into heart will always be the underlying theme or not even theme, guide. The biggest guide through these times is like drop into your heart, because, really in the heart, in the essence, in the energy of heart and love and compassion and that generosity that comes from that place, it's really hard to do harm, right? And we're all judgmental. We can all go into judgment. All of us. I don't think there's any single one of us that doesn't at some point go into judgment. But then it's also like owning it. Like, oh, yep, I'm going into judgment. How does that make me feel? Well, not great. I'm still doing it, but doesn't make me feel good. You just see it. You feel it. You're aware of it, right? So anyway, I've spoken a lot about judgment in other episodes. You can always go dig into those. So, okay, let's get to the juicy bit around relationship, because I know that there really is an epidemic of, I speak more to women, so I see it more amongst women, but I also, know that men are experiencing it in their own version. Apparently, I think there's just a greater population of women on the planet anyway, so we might just outnumber. So sovereignty, I was thinking about this, like, okay, why, what is going on with relationship right now? Whether people are single and not able to find a relationship that is in alignment with who they are, or, people that are in relationships, a lot of people separating, divorcing, or just going through it, really going through it. So what I was reflecting upon is, well, if we are spiritually growing up and we're maturing and we're evolving and we're coming into our sovereignty, that means that anything that is based on codependency, anything that is based on like a trauma bond, anything that is still, I don't really like using this word, but I'll use it because I know some people like it. Anything that's based still in that cycle of karma, I think we're having to have a really good, loving look at it and ask ourselves, do we want to continue this pattern? Do we want to continue this cycle? So I think some of the reasons of why women are choosing to remain single, choosing whether that's conscious or unconscious, but the choice, it's not that they want to be single necessarily, but it's this kind of real, like, I'm not going to go back into the old pattern. I'm not going to repeat that cycle of codependence or toxicity or, avoidant attachment or, whatever it is that they've recognized has been the pattern. They're not willing to settle for that anymore. And so they're choosing to be on their own rather than replicating the old pattern. And they're stepping up. They're really stepping up to the plate. I think men are slightly behind. I think they're doing the work, but I think they're slightly behind. And so women are kind of waiting. They're like, I would rather hold out to really be in the relationship that I want to be in, and a relationship that is sovereign, that is interdependent, not codependent. So remember, I always say the middle path, not uber independent, not super codependent, but interdependent. And interdependent to me is the image of two trees that stand next to each other. They have their own sovereign trunks, right? Their roots are connected, but they have their sovereign trunks, their being. And so, this brings two whole people into a relationship rather than people that believe the other is going to make them whole. The other is going to make life happy and better and good. And, and I'm not going to deny the fact that when we are in healthy, happy relationships, that 100% enhances our lives. It enhances our happiness and our fulfillment. And because we're interrelational beings, we're social beings. We want connection. Relationship is an amazing way of experiencing love, giving love, receiving love, but also growth, spiritual growth. I've always personally looked at relationship as a huge spiritual teacher. Like, it's amazing. If you really want to take it on consciously, there is so much to reveal and reflect and grow and evolve through. So it's really a magical, special thing. And if we want to go into the spirituality of relationship and the spirituality of intimacy, I unfortunately think the whole tantric scene has really been hijacked, and it's not really what tantra really is, or intimacy. Even that word gets thrown around a lot, and everybody thinks it's just about physicality and sex and being free, and I'm sexually free. And it's actually, there's so much trauma bonds being, played out and re-triggered and re-traumatized again and again and again, and not recognizing that it's firstly, we have to heal the wound on the inside, but intimacy is about being in a vulnerable heart, being in a powerful, vulnerable heart. Because for me, vulnerability isn't weakness. It's incredibly powerful, but it's honest, it's open, it's transparent, it's authentic, it's human, it's divine. And that actually, what brings us into that ability to connect to the divine through intimacy, through sexual union, is an energetic thing. It's a heart-based thing. It's not just a physical thing. The physicality is a vehicle, but if you're not incorporating the energetics of that, if you're not in your heart, if you're not in your sovereignty, if you're not in your authenticity, if you're not in your, the truth of who you are, humbly, wholly, holding your vulnerability, we're not going to access it in the same way. If we're just stuck in the physical, playing out the old karmic cycles and the old trauma bonds, we're not going to reach that point of divinity, because it's through energy, right? We're missing the point if we just get stuck in the physicality. And I was listening to a short snippet of a video last night that was talking about that, we're spiritual beings, we have intellect, and we have a physical body. But when we're disconnected from this I am, you're saying 95% of people don't know who they are, and they're reacting to life. They're not really living life. And so when that happens and we don't know that I am, not just I am Corinne, I am this body, I am what I do, but who truly am I? And this was the question I asked myself when I was 21. Who am I without the identity of being a ballet dancer? When I had to leave the ballet and the idea of what I thought the trajectory of my life would be, I had to ask myself, really, who am I? Who am I as a soul, as an essence, that blueprint of who I truly am, not just this body, not this character of Corinne. And he said, when we're not connected to that, then we are entrapped and imprisoned in the physical world, and everything becomes about the physical world. And I think that's, what we're awakening and remembering right now. We're awakening to this, we're not just the physical world. We're not just this physical body. We're not just this personality. My name is Corinne, your name is, whatever it is. That we're more than that. And that is, this is why I do work now around spiritual awakening and helping people move through that transition, because it's wonderful and it's elating and enlightening, and also sometimes really disorienting, because it's the loss of an old identity, and it's a loss of a reality that we once knew, right? Everything shifts, and it's like, whoa, reality really feels augmented. And that's a transition that we need to move through, but ultimately it's a liberation, because we're expanding into the who we truly are, which is so much bigger and vaster than just this tiny little physical vessel, right? Which is amazing, but it's also very small. and also expanding beyond just the physical 3D world of, just kind of moving through the motions of life, which can become very robotic and very routine and very monotonous, and actually coming back more into the mystical and the magical and the etheric. And, then we tie in the synchronicities, and, then when you start to go into that expansion of who you are, then all of our innate abilities come back. Like I'm definitely seeing my psychic abilities come in more, my like telepathy, it's not like controlled, but there's absolutely like that is definitely coming in. And even things like this, the color spectrum is different. I'm seeing certain things in the whatever, in the eye, the air, sorry, around me. So we've just been living in this tiny, teeny little box of existence, and, we're expanding into it. So, but coming back into the theme of sovereignty is we have to really be curious and question the I am beyond just the personality and the physical body and the physical worlds. And I think I was listening to somebody else on a podcast saying this, that she's really seeing that a lot of people, even if they haven't fully gone through a spiritual awakening yet, they are beginning to just have these questions of what is the meaning of this? Yeah, who am I? What am I doing here? It does become an existential kind of investigation because it really is like, well, what is this? What am I doing here? And sometimes that can feel, again, very inspiring and interesting, and sometimes it can feel really discombobulating and slightly unnerving because, again, we're questioning what we thought was solid and stable, and recognizing that it's not. It doesn't mean that there can't be stability, but it's, if you've followed my journey this year, I feel like I'm learning how to not just walk, but be in thin air, to find grounding in thin air, because I haven't had much stability and, grounding and rooting, like just not having a home is not that I'm homeless, but you know what I mean? Like not having my home where I have my things and I can stay and I know where I'm going to be next month. And that does give a sense of grounding. And we need that instinctually, right? But I've really learned, like, okay, what is it to find grounding within myself? I'm looking actually right now out on the balcony. There's an air plant, and air plants don't have any roots, but they grow. They're growing in the air. It's really remarkable. So I look to it every single day and go, oh yeah, that's what I'm learning to do. So, when it comes to relationship, I think it's almost like relationship is facing a real challenge right now, because it's like, we're not going to do it the old way. And when I say, it's not like any kind of reprimanding, but it's kind of like a hold up. We're in this collective evolution. So part of collective evolution is we have to outgrow and shed the skins that no longer serve us. They're keeping us small. They're keeping us limited. They're keeping us from reaching our divine potential, right? They're keeping us from the incredibly powerful beings that we are. And so we have to let go of it. We have to go, okay, these are some like behaviors that I don't want to replicate anymore. These are some ideologies and some belief systems and some paradigms that are just keeping me imprisoned. I don't want to do that anymore. Right? This is keeping me in a lack of self-worth. This is keeping me fragmented, and therefore I do not feel whole, because we are whole, but the fragmentation and the severing of, I like this part, but I don't like this part. This part's okay, but I want to get rid of that part. That's the fragmentation, and that's the feeling of not being whole, right? So we're really being, I don't want to use the word tested, but in a way we kind of are. But I don't mean like in school, right? And you're going to be punished and you're going to get a bad grade. We're being invited really into growth. We're being invited into evolution. And if we can find the courage to move through the hard, sticky, uncomfortable part, because letting go of an old habit for the human and the ego is really hard, right? It is challenging. And it takes persistence and consistency and a hell of a lot of trust, faith, and patience. We're undoing a lot, which is not even ours. It's also the collective. It's also ancestral. But I think we also get to choose at one point to make that sovereign conscious choice of, I'm not playing this character anymore. I'm not playing by these old rules. I'm not playing within these old paradigms and constructs and belief systems. No, I choose not to anymore because it's not serving me. And that's it. Basta. Right? I do believe we can make that choice. And then when we make that choice and we have the intention, then we have to hold ourselves accountable to, am I going to take self-responsibility and walk my talk? Right? Put that into action and, do that lovingly and kindly and patiently. And like, sometimes we'll get it, sometimes we won't. That's okay. That's all part of the process. Right? So I really feel that relationships won't come in with greater ease until we look at this piece. And it's just my observation. Doesn't mean that it's the one truth. There is no one truth. I mean, I think there's a one greater truth, but you know what I mean. When I'm speaking to this specifically, let's say there's different angles that we can look at it from, and I'm looking at it through this one particular angle. So the invitation then becomes, well, in what ways am I not sovereign? What ways am I not showing up and making choices that align me into my sovereignty? In what ways am I handing over my power? In what ways am I codependent? In what ways am I, delegating my inner authority to someone else and giving them greater authority, be it a political figure or a spiritual teacher or guru? In what ways am I handing over my authority? Like I'm even hoping that the people that are listening to this, I'm in the circle with you. I'm not here to give you answers. I'm not here to say that I know the one right way. I'm in the circle with you, in the conversation with you. And so, I think sometimes all of these organizations took what the original being once said. The Buddha said, try it out for yourself. Jesus said the same thing. No pure-hearted, quote unquote, leader would always say, do what I tell you. That would be out of integrity. That would be out of truth. That would be out of authenticity. That would be out of heart and out of love. And therefore out of the true essence of who we are. When we say, do it my way, do it like this, that's coming from, ego, control, fear, manipulation. And I think this is a thing too, just to drop in of like, this is a time of discernment. And so when we're in our sovereignty, discernment becomes very important because when we're not sovereign, we blindly follow, right? We blindly follow, we blindly trust, we blindly walk through life. Discernment goes, let me see what I think about that. Let me think critically about that. Critical thinking, which just means let me question that. Let me look at that from different angles. What do I feel to be true? And not just what is the general consensus or the opinion or the mainstream or what is being, flashed at you all the time. And, it's discernment is coming more into that state of sovereignty of like, wait a second, I'm an adult here. What do I think about this? What does my intuition tell me about this, right? And we can take that into all parts of our lives, right? It's not just on the world stage, but it's also in our relationships, with our work, with whatever dynamic. We are redefining and restructuring our relationship to relationship, our relationship to others, most importantly, our relationship to ourselves. And so coming into sovereignty is coming into our power, which is really just coming into who we truly are. And when I say power, it's not power over others through manipulation. When I mean power, it's like you are a force of nature and an incredibly powerful human and divine being because you are in the truth of who you are. That is what power is. Power is an embodiment of truth, of authenticity, of love. not this crap that we're seeing played out in the world, which has to do with fear and manipulation and control. That's not power. That's again, we're redefining words. And, we could say it's semantics, but it matters. Words are powerful. So our connotation with words is very, very powerful. It's very important. So I often invite people like, what is your definition? And if it's one that's not of service, to humanity and to yourself, not in a self-serving way, but in a self-generous way, if it's not loving, if it's not supportive, redefine it. So, the invitation for today is, all of these questions that I already brought up is really start to question, how are you either in sovereignty or not in sovereignty? And notice the difference. I'm very experiential, so I really like to, tune you into how does it feel? Because that's how you build awareness. How does it feel when I'm not in sovereignty? When I'm handing over my authority to someone else? When I'm not trusting myself and I'm blindly following or believing that? Or when I'm disengaged in my life and I'm just kind of sleepwalking through it? Or when I'm in codependency? Or when I say all of that, I don't say like, oh, all that stuff is bad and you want to judge it and you want to get rid of it. No, it's like, okay, that's interesting. How does it make me feel? No judgment. There's no blame here. There's no shame here. It's just the curiosity to recognize, oh, how does that make me feel? And if it doesn't make you feel good, okay, come back to center. Come back to getting to know the essence of who you truly are. And, to find out the essence of who you truly are, you might need some guidance from somebody to help you and show you. Or I really recommend go spend time in nature. Go spend time in silence, in stillness, in reflection, in contemplation. That's how you're going to discover over time the essence of who you are, because it's a feeling and it's a state of being. It's not a rational thought, right? So give yourself the time to discover who you are, the essence of who you are. And the more you get to understand the greater I am of who you are, the energy, the feeling, the sensation, the embodiment, the physicality, the emotionality, the energetics of all of that, you will understand more and more and more what your sovereignty feels like. And then you will be able to show up as that being, right? As that embodiment. And you will be able to have your words reflect that sovereignty and your actions reflect that sovereignty. I hope that makes sense. So the invitation is just, sometimes the easiest way to begin the process is to recognize when we're not in it and when we are in it. What does it feel like when we're not in it? What does it feel like when we are in it? And I get that it's kind of like this side of the page and that side of the page, but it's a beginning point. Right? Then with everything that I talk about when I'm cueing you into awareness, it's all about getting very familiar with the nuances of energy and feeling. Energy and feeling will tell you if you're out of center, if you're in center, and you start to understand I work also around emotional intelligence. You begin to understand the language of your emotional landscape. And that is so helpful because that also can show you when am I outside of center or when am I in center. And when I say that, I want to be really mindful to be clear that it's not that we're going to be in center 100% of the time and like, oh my God, if I fall off center, like I'm failing, I'm doing it wrong. No. It's the willow in the wind. This isn't rigid, right? This isn't a rigidity. It's a remembering to keep coming back. Keep coming back. It's okay. You wander off. That's fine. Keep coming back. Home is always there. The door is always open as long as your heart is open. If your heart is closed, well, then we have to move through the armor first, right? But the door to our heart and to our home should always be open. We might go astray a little bit, but we are always welcome to come back home, right? There's always going to be like a cozy armchair there for you. So just play with that. Start to get into the feeling. And, you might even need to write down a list This is what it feels like and looks like when I'm in my sovereignty. This is what it feels like and looks like when I'm not in my sovereignty. How is that playing out in my relationships with myself, with my friends, with my community, with my family, with my colleagues, in my romantic relationships? Look at it through the lens of, am I sovereign or am I not sovereign? No judgment, no blame, no shame, none of that. Simple curiosity and awareness. Awareness helps us begin to look at life through a clear lens, not a tinted lens. A tinted lens is all our belief systems. We'll never be 100% objective. It's impossible, right? But we want to get as clear as possible so that we can still understand, okay, I'm looking through the lens of Corinne and this particular angle of consciousness, but I'm looking at it with as clear a lens as possible. So I hope that that's helpful. It's, again, as all these conversations, it's something that could just continue to unfold, but I'm just want to drop these bits in. All of them are a point of reflection, an invitation for contemplation. And so, my invitation to you is go off and be with yourself and think about these things and feel these things. And you don't have to agree with everything that I'm saying, but if it invites you to have your own inner conversation with yourself, that's wonderful. Like, then I'm super happy about that. It doesn't always have to be about agreement, but what does it open up in you? And to have the foundation of all of this in non-judgment, the foundation of no matter what you're thinking, feeling, or experiencing, it's okay. It's okay. We're holding this in the container of love. That has to be the container. Otherwise, we're just creating unnecessary suffering for us. So go and explore and discover and be curious, but please do it in the lap of love, in the container of love, so that you feel free to do all of these things without the fear of being judged, most especially by yourself. So I hope that helps. I'm going to leave it at that for now. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.